Meet Dave of Delusions of Grandeur, actor, producer, and director of films like Tales of the Forgotten. He has come to assemble a team of freaks, geeks, and even worse, film nerds, to discuss films ranging from mainstream to downright crazy. There is Tammy car enthusiast and Dave's fiance, Dustin reptile expert and overall horror collector, Jake environmentalist and fine art film critic, and finally Brandon, a therapist with a love of film that can only be seen as insanity. Together under Dave's leadership, they are Inside Movies Galore. Enjoy the show. Enjoy the show.
Alrighty, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are starting a new month, and we're going to give you an offer that you can't refuse. But I'm going to hand you over to Jake, because this is his month, and this year we're doing franchises. So, Jake, which franchise did you choose for us to watch this month?
We will be looking at Francis Ford Coppola's treatment of Mario Puzo's The Godfather. Of course, I've been with this movie channel for a little while, and while we often have plumbed the depths of cinema with movies like Bunny the Killer Thing, they can't all be those kind of movies. Every now and then we got to cover some classy shit. So I figured this one was inevitably going to be a choice sooner or later. And when we decided to do franchises, I was like, okay, that's going to be a hell of a lot of viewing for 1 month, but it's a good opportunity, especially because the first two movies really are one movie. There's not really two ways about it. They are, the book was adapted into two movies. So I thought it would be a really cool one to hit. This is one of my favorite films. It's the number 2 film according to IMDb's top 250. It won 3 Oscars. You know, it's got a bunch of people that kind of like it. But anyway, for the 10 of you who have never heard of The Godfather, IMDb has a very simple description. The aging patriarch of an organized crime dynasty transfers control of his clandestine empire to his reluctant son, which is maybe not the most accurate summation, but it's close enough.
That's the Reader's Digest version, if I ever heard one.
Exactly. Essentially, it's a movie about the Mafia, specifically the Sicilian mob in 1940s New York. And if, at any rate, let's go ahead before we dive too deep and go around the room and just get everyone's thoughts on this. KJ, it's been a while since you've been here with us. Why don't you kick us off? Is this your first time seeing The Godfather, and what are your impressions?
Well, I want to say first off, thanks for inviting me back. My first impressions, I've seen this movie probably about 60 to 75 times.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a movie I probably read about every book I could probably find on. It's a movie that does mean a lot to me, which is ironic because when I first saw it, I thought it was the most boringest piece of shit I ever saw. I was 8 years old when I first saw this movie on television, and I was like, "This is that great movie that everyone's talking about." And my grandma was like, "Yeah, this is like one of the best movies ever made." I was like, "No, it ain't." So I went on to watching G.I. Joe or some shit, and then many years later, I came back to this movie when I was older, and when I saw it, I really was completely blown away because the story is one I think that's universal, which is about family and about trying to protect your family, essentially, by any means necessary. So, no, this movie means a lot to me. There's a lot I could say, but I'm going to go ahead and pass the buck. But I look forward to talking more in depth about it.
All right. Yeah, you said you read a whole lot of books about it. Have you read the book by Puzo?
Yes, I have.
All right.
I read it actually a couple of times, yeah.
Good deal. All right. Did we lose Tammy, or is she?
She's probably going to be coming back. I think she was having some camera issues.
Okay. Okay. Then we'll go ahead and hit you next, Dave. Since I just had you on, why don't we hit you next? Is this your first time watching this movie, and what were your impressions?
No, this is at least my 20th time watching this movie. But I also remember playing the game on PS2 like forever. So I kept having like seeing scenes from the game in my mind while I'm watching this. I'm like, okay, that happened. That happened. I remember putting the horse in the dude's bed. Jesus Christ, you know. So it's like I'm picturing in my mind my gameplay at the time. And I wish that they would remaster it for like later, you know, later game consoles, because it's just that fucking good. I mean, Mafia and LA Noire just don't cut it, but you know, it is what it is. When I first saw this movie, yes, it was boring as shit myself. I couldn't understand why my father loved it so much. But then I read the book later on, uh, and I read other material by Mario Puzo, like The Don, and the Mafia family, and things of that nature, you know. And I went back to it and watched it in its entirety. I definitely watched it with friends growing up, and it became a favorite of the cinematic world. And to be fair and honest, Francis Ford Coppola is a very good director. I mean, he directed the Bram Stoker's Dracula, among among many other films, and yes, there is a history of these films being filmed widely apart from each other, but it's something. The music is awesome to listen to. The setup for everything. I mean, once you understand the history behind it, it's something to compare to. So, um, that being said, I enjoy it. I enjoy coming back to it, even though it is a long huddle. But I guess this is payback for me putting you through the stand last month. So,
All right.
I pass the buck now.
All right. A lot of people passing the buck here. All right. We'll go ahead and go to you next, Tammy. Is this your first time seeing The Godfather, and what are your impressions?
No, it's not the first time. It's basically only the second time because I had never watched any of them, and David knew it, and he finally convinced me to watch them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe a couple years back or so.
Yeah.
So, it is. I don't want to say boring. It's kind of like kind of drawn out a little bit, you know. It's interesting, you know, and then Um, but even though it's kind of like drawn out, you gotta pay attention, or you lose track of who is who and what's going on and who and all that.
Mhm.
So I thought it was all right. I've never really. The reason I had not watched it is I just didn't think I was going to get into the gangster type of thing, or
Right.
mafia or whatever you want to call it, But no, it was interesting.
All right. All right. So, Brittany, is this your first time seeing this movie? And what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it's my first time. Ironically,
Wow.
I've gone through film history classes and also been a fan of a lot of mobster scenarios, both in TV and film. And I never watched The Godfather. So most of it I've seen though, because everybody parodies this film.
Oh yeah.
So it's not unheard of knowing most of the scenes as they come out. But it's good to finally see it in place. It does seem a little grueling and long at times, but that's mainly because we're talking about a film that was made in the 70s that had subtlety throughout the film and then brings in sort of those harsh moments of what the mob kind of did. It's no like retrospective of true events like Goodfellas is, but it does carry a little bit of that weight.
All right. Was that your full report?
Well, it's pretty much how I feel. It's a classic film. It deserves to be in the top, 100, 200. I don't know if I'd put it at number 2, but that's personal opinions there.
Right. Your description reminded me, I don't remember if I've mentioned this to you. I probably have at some point. I kind of had a similar, and I wonder if this is the same feeling you had when I saw Casablanca for the first time. I felt like I had already seen the entire movie. I had this sense of deja vu. I knew it was the first time I'd seen it, but it is parodied and referenced so much that I had this sense of deja vu when I finally saw it.
Yeah, but that film also gets misquoted a lot.
That's true.
This one's pretty easily quoted.
Yeah.
And to see some top named actors come out of this,
right,
is just amusing. Right. So,
although it's amazing, a lot of them were so early in their career, and I was commenting on how young James Caan looks, and how young Al Pacino looks, and how young Diane Keaton and Robert Duvall.
Yeah, they still got their baby fat.
I know. Now, of course, we see a lot of Diane Keaton in the Woody Allen films of the era, and I think Brittany might have been the one that pointed out that Duvall was in To Kill a Mockingbird, or maybe Dave pointed that out.
Yeah, I did.
Dave probably pointed it out to you. I've not watched To Kill a Mockingbird either, so
well,
I've read the book, but I haven't watched the film.
Well, he plays Boo Radley in that one, and he is very young in that.
Ava Goda's in this film, and honestly, that's the youngest I've seen Ava Goda in.
Yeah, he's middle-aged in this movie. All right. How about you, Brandon?
Well, I can say I've seen it at least 2 times, maybe 3 times in my time period. I can't tell you if I've seen it 3 times, but I remember I first saw it in 2003. And the reason why I knew I had to see it, and I was finally getting into movie stuff. I was actually really heavy into comics and video games prior to that. And then I kind of got away from comics and video games and gotten more into watching movies all the time around that time period. So I got the Godfather trilogy. Everybody said you had to watch it. So we had a really bad ice storm in Emporia that year. And I got up early thinking that we were on for work, and I got there and it was closed. So I came back and I was like, well, I've got the whole day. So I watched the whole Godfather trilogy back to back throughout the whole day. I remember it because by the time I hit the third one, there was that scene where it was snowing outside there. It was also snowing outside when I was watching it.
All right.
So it wasn't the first time I saw it. I did remember a lot of stuff from The Godfather, a lot of references. Some of my favorite references were of course, Mafia.
Right.
Who's the author of Sense and Sensibility?
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen's Mafia. I remember watching that one with Jeff Bridges, and I also remember watching The Freshman with our titular head of the family reprising his role again.
Right.
So I had watched some of those, and I'd watched some also. I'd watched Goodfellas and a few others prior to this. So,
and also you can't forget the Don Giovanni scene in Robin Hood Men in Tights.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, my earliest exposure to The Godfather was when I watched Hot to Trot with John Candy and what's his name? Bobcat Goldthwait. And they say that Don, who's the talking horse, his brother had gone off the deep end because he watched Godfather. He saw that scene with the horse's head. He was never quite right afterwards. And I didn't know exactly what that meant until I watched that later. But I actually got to show Kim this the first time.
Oh, really?
We were there together. She's going to try and watch because she's only seen the third movie. So it'll be kind of cool to watch those together with her.
Oh, so she saw the worst of them all.
Yeah. Well, that was the one that was cycling over TV a lot. And we both agreed that for a 3-hour movie, not only did it go by too fast, it felt like it was skipping huge sections as it went. So it felt so great movie. Oddly enough, might have even done better with some extension.
Well, and again, have you read the book?
No.
They basically split the book into 2 parts, and I got the feeling this time around myself that there were some really long time jumps, and I'm like, I know some of those are filled in the second movie, but not all of them are. Essentially, for the second movie, it was mostly a sequel and a prequel in one. They took the flashback scenes of Vito's early years, but we'll talk about that next week. But I think some of those gaps are filled in the second movie too, but I could be remembering that wrong. But yeah, it does cover a lot of time. And that's always a thing when you're covering a lot of time, is that you're going to feel like they kind of rushed a few parts.
But I didn't feel bored at any part of that. I couldn't tell you how I felt when I was watching it in 2003, because that was over 20 years ago.
Right.
But I can say that I must not have been too bored because I watched all 3 back to back, and I don't think I fell asleep. So
that's saying something for you. That's definitely saying something for you. Okay. So for me, I have seen this before. I want to say this is my 3rd viewing. It might be my 4th. I can't swear to it. It might even be more than that. It's such a long movie. I can definitely say I haven't seen it a lot, but I've seen it multiple times. Going back at least to college. I probably saw it the first time before 2003, but not long before that. I would guess probably 01, 02, but I can't swear to it. I know that when they put that really nice set out on DVD about 15-ish years ago, I snapped it up, and I know I watched all 3 movies after that. I broke out my Blu-ray set for this one to try and watch the so-called remastered edition. It's been a long enough since I've seen it. I don't know if anyone has seen both versions and has the old version fresher in their mind, so they can tell me, but I didn't really notice that it was a whole lot crisper and cleaner. But I don't know. Does anyone have a knowledge of that for sure?
I haven't exactly gotten the 4K yet myself, so
It's not 4K. I don't have a 4K player, but
Okay.
it's like the remake. You know, Coppola did that restoration.
Oh, you're talking about the restoration.
Yeah.
They changed the color grade, pretty much.
Okay.
Because the original master of the film was almost deteriorating back in like the late 90s before they went back and restored it.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I thought it looked good, but I was like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, I can't swear to it that this looks better, but it's been a few years since the last time.
I have the 4K edition of it, and I can say that you can tell where the film must have degraded at points because the lighting in some scenes is really rough.
Right.
And I don't know whether that actually... Sometimes a 4K or a Blu-ray can make a film look worse than a DVD, depending, especially when it comes to color and light, if they don't restore them as well. And it could just be that the 4K was just too much for the film to handle.
Could be.
True.
Yeah, I need to unearth my copy of the Coda to eventually watch it anyways, so...
Apparently the cinematographer, I think I read something like he had picked up a nickname like the Prince of Darkness or something because he had a tendency to have way too dark looking movies. But so it was apparently very dark to begin with. But I will say that overall, I think, you know, the film looks good. I personally, I feel like from the word go, I thought this was a deeply impressive movie. It was one that I had heard about a lot. I do remember probably my first exposure was Robin Hood Men in Tights, the Don Giovanni scene, you know, and specifically, I always remember the part where the sheriff of Rottingham says something to him like, "Ah, yes, you put it succinctly," and he's like, "So what?" "Succinctly, it means perfectly." "Oh yes, I do that." You know, I always like that part. And we'll have to cover that movie one of these days, somewhere down the road. But and of course there was the reference. There's the eternal debate about, is The Godfather Part 2 better than The Godfather? And of course that was a big part of Scream 2, the film class with Randy and the Timothy Oliphant character. So I'd seen the references. I'd heard, you know, references to it. Finally got around to it, I think, in college. And like I said, I've always thought that this is one of the great films. It is long. It's longer than I typically make the time for a movie. And it does feel strangely rushed at times. Despite its length, it does feel a little rushed at times. And it feels a little slow at times. The opening wedding sequence is a long sequence. I would say what a half hour maybe for the wedding. It's a long sequence. Of course, it includes a lot. It includes those opening scenes of him meeting the Undertaker and the Baker and all these people. The introduction of Luca Brasi, the introduction of Mike and Kay, and well, the whole family really. They're all it's a long sequence, but it does a really good job of introducing most of the players, at least in terms of the Corleone family. And it is probably one of the most parodied parts of the movie. All this stuff about, how many things have referenced Brazzi's, I thank you for inviting me on the day of your daughter's wedding, and may her first child be a masculine child. That's like,
Well,
how many times have we seen that parodied? I feel like there've been many.
he's obviously rehearsing on the side, just to not insult the Don. And when he gets in front of the Don, he still messes up.
Right. Well, supposedly,
I just thought they were parodying more of the Undertaker there when he got there.
Well, we see that too, definitely. But the supposedly the actor that plays Brasi, he had trouble. He was so nervous about working with Marlon Brando that he flubbed his lines. And apparently they decided to go back and have him rehearsing to make it more, I guess, to add a little flavor to him flubbing that line, I guess you could say. Lenny Montana is the actor there.
It also is to show you how much he really respected the Don, and that he was so afraid to be able to even say what he really wanted to say.
Right.
In a weird way.
So, we'll go ahead real quick. Well, we'll start, since we're talking about Luca Brasi. He is basically Vito Corleone's. He's sort of a
angel of death character.
He's what?
I would call him an angel of death character.
He is essentially an angel of death character. He is, in fact, Michael's talking with Kay and tells a colorful story. When she notices Brazzi talking to himself, he tells her the story that, and also Johnny Fontaine has shown up. He's played by Al Martino. Johnny Fontaine is one of the many people who calls Vito Corleone Godfather. And he's a very popular singer and actor out in Hollywood. And when he shows up at the wedding, there's all this screaming and and it turns out even Kay is a fan. And this is where
and womanizer.
But this is where Michael tells the story of how he got out of his band contract. And he said that Brazzi had helped. Actually, I'm going to mess this up too. I'm trying to remember.
Brazzi helped give him an offer that he can't refuse.
Well, that's why I was trying to remember if he was helping Vito or not. But yeah, it was him. He's like, he made him an offer he couldn't refuse. And she looks at him funny. He's like, he held a gun to his head and assured him that either his signature or his brains would be on that paper. It's like okay.
He says it's so deadpan to the point it's like,
right.
You're looking at him like, what the hell? Like, your father does this and you can just sit here and speak like this about it. It's like the first introduction for Kate to like, no, this is a part of their life.
Right. And we should we'll come back to Vito Corleone in a moment, but we should go ahead and, like I said, this is the introduction for Michael Corleone and Kay Adams, who is his girlfriend at the time. Michael is the youngest son. He is one of 4 children of Vito Corleone. He is the youngest son. He's a war hero. He is not part of the family business. And this is by design. Later on, Vito actually tells him, like, I think it's Vito that actually tells him, like, I had seen you in sort of a, a senator or something, like,
Yeah.
he's all in being moving up in the quote unquote legitimate spheres of power. And in fact, when Michael later does take over the family business, he does it with a mindset of quote unquote going legitimate within a few years. And Kay, of course, is his girlfriend. She's played by Diane Keaton. I said Michael's Al Pacino. I'm sure I did. But anyway, and she is essentially an innocent. This is a whole new world for her. I think she's like a school teacher, if I understood that correctly. And basically, they've been dating. They're having a good time. He invites her to the wedding. And again, that is her introduction to everything there. We also, the wedding is the daughter of the family, Connie, played by Talia Shire, and she is marrying Carlo, who's played by Johnny Russo. And we find out pretty quickly that Carlo is an asshole.
Yep. Oh, did we say the time frame this movie took place in? It goes from 1945 to 1955.
Okay, I don't think we said that exactly, but yeah, it starts. So 10 years. That sounds good. So basically, and in one of the most infamous bits of Hollywood nepotism, Sophia Coppola, a very, very gifted director, takes a lot of flack for her performance in the third Godfather movie.
Hey, we got to see her premiere performance, her first ever acting role in this movie.
Honestly, if I'm going to be 100% honest, I thought Talia Shire's performance was pretty rough.
Well, I mean, Sophia Coppola couldn't help her performance in this movie.
Well, yeah, I mean, she was young in this,
an infant.
But yeah, so we've got those. They're and she obviously is not. This is a strongly patriarchal clan. She's obviously not part of the business either. But and they give directions early on that Carlo will not be part of the business. That changes later, but for now. And then you have Fredo. A few months back, we covered the last film John Cazale did, which was The Deer Hunter. The first film he ever did, or at least the first feature film he ever did, was The Godfather. And in between, he did The Godfather Part 2, The Conversation, and Dog Day Afternoon. And again, I don't know that anyone has ever batted that well in their Hollywood career.
No. Seriously, no.
That's a pretty impressive filmography, especially for one so short. And it is a shame that he passed away so fairly young. But he plays Fredo, who's kind of the middle brother. He's not dumb, but he's clearly not the sharpest tool in the shed. He's a nice, decent by this family's standards.
He's a sleazeball by their standards.
Fredo's not that. He's not a bad guy. He's just not a very strong.
He's a little greasy.
He gets sent out to Vegas because they figure he won't do much harm out there, and he ends up loving it. Like it's his bag. He gets women, he gets booze, he gets gambling, and he doesn't have a lot of responsibility. So he actually, that works out well for him, at least in this movie.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. What's that?
One of my favorite comedies of all time is Analyze This with Robert De Niro and Billy Crystal. And they have that scene where Billy Crystal's having the dream, and of course he's being assassinated at the car, where you get the scene where the Godfather gets assassinated, right. And De Niro's the one dropping the oranges, and when he tells De Niro about the dream, he's like, what, I was Fredo? No. That's not how it works.
Right. And actually, yeah, and that is the thing. When there's the attempt on Vito's life, Fredo is the one who is there. And he's just being trying to be a good son, and he fails him. That he does not handle that well. But then, speaking of not handling things well, the oldest brother, Sonny Santino, but they call him Sonny, played by James Caan, is widely regarded as a hothead. He is very easily angered. He is impulsive. He is essentially one of Vito's top lieutenants. He does do a good job helping his father out, but it's very clear that he needs some anger management.
He's a great
Some
enforcer,
impulse
just not a
control.
great leader.
He's a
Yeah.
wife beater.
Yeah, well, yeah, there is that too, and a womanizer, and all
If
kinds of fun things.
If the
Yeah,
film
he's-
had been made a few years later, it would be Joe Pesci in that role.
Yeah, I could see
Yeah.
that. I could see that. And then his brother by another mother is Tom Hagen, played by Robert Duvall. He is the family consigliere. He is and it's an unusual thing. It's kind of like in Goodfellas, where you had De Niro played, I believe, an Irish character, if I remember correctly. And I believe Ray Liotta, I think, also was not strictly Italian in that.
Yeah, only Pesci's character was Italian.
Right. And they made a big deal about how they could only rise but so high in the ranks. And it's similar here with Tom Hagen. Vito took him in off the streets, adopted him as a son. He is Sonny's bro, but he is also very calm and measured and a good, intelligent guy, trained in law. He is the consigliere. When Mike takes over, he boots him out of that role, but maintains him as counsel, which is kind of a backhanded compliment, to put it kindly.
Well, it makes sense because it's as his brother had said. No offense to you, but you're not a wartime consigliere.
Right.
And Michael was in the middle of a war
Right.
at the time.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Well,
true.
yeah.
A war that was partly of Sonny's making, but we'll get into that when we get further into the plot. Just a couple others are kind of introduced early on. We mentioned Abe Vigoda. He plays Tessio. Richard S. Castellano plays Clemensa. They are two of Vito's top lieutenants. They're very trusted, very high in the family. They get along well with the kids. And
I'll be honest, in the Godfather game, Clemensa is your go-to guy.
Okay.
He's the one who takes you through all the missions and helps you get what you need and all the advice that you need in the game. So I think that
Mhm.
is something that even though it was in the game, I think that Clemensa was kind of a go-to guy.
Well, he definitely is if you're hungry. They make it very clear. He knows his way around the kitchen.
But if I could add something real quick, Clemensa, if you read the book,
Mhm.
Clemensa, and they actually showed in Godfather Part 2, Clemensa is the person that actually gets the Don into crime or into criminal organization, essentially, by doing petty crimes, which eventually leads to them having to pay money to the guy that basically owns the block. And it's the Don who actually kills that guy and assumes the power of becoming the Don, essentially, later on.
Right.
So Clemensa is the person that pretty much got him started.
Okay. Yeah.
And he just gets fatter as he goes along. So
Yeah,
Well,
was
he
eating good, man.
he definitely wasn't that rotund when they were young. And then, of course, we have the Don himself, Don Vito Corleone, played by Marlon Brando. Generally considered one of his iconic roles. Brando is a character.
Strange dude. He's a
He's an
strange
actor.
dude.
What's up?
He's a strange dude.
Yes, he is an actor whose reputation precedes him, and not always in a pleasant way, but he was also very quirky and eccentric. He won Best Actor for this movie and did not show up at the ceremony, and famously instead sent a Native American woman to turn down the award on his behalf. And basically it was to protest the treatment of Native Americans in Hollywood.
Wasn't that the one where John Wayne was getting ready to go up and punch her in the face or something like that? Because he was,
That's the same one, yeah.
Because if he was such a racist.
And the irony is she wasn't even Indian. That's the irony of it, though. But she wasn't even Indian.
And then there was other controversy around this too. And one was apparently Al Pacino was up for supporting actor and was pissed that he was up for support when he had more screen time than Marlon Brando, which I give him credit that he's right about that. He should have been up for lead.
Brando isn't even in the movie for like 25 minutes.
Right.
His presence looms.
His presence looms large. No, definitely.
So I kind of see why he was nominated, though.
Yeah, but still, it was some bullshit.
True.
And then there's the other thing. This movie, and we'll get to the music discussion at the end, but just from my perspective, Nino Rota's score for this is glorious. It is one of the greatest scores ever written, but apparently it heavily borrowed some of his own previous work, to the effect that the nomination that the movie got was withdrawn, apparently. And then on top of it, to add insult to injury, the only competitive Oscar Charles Chaplin ever won was for the score for Limelight, which was a 20-year-old film. It beat this one because of the arcane rules of the Oscars. That's just totally messed up on every level. It's like,
that really is.
You can't steal from yourself. I mean, who can you do?
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, John Williams has been stealing from himself for years, and he's been up for how many?
So
what do you mean been up? He's won so many.
That's what.
One thing I'll give this. One thing I thought was strange about this, above most things, is that I remember watching this at first and being surprised as to how little. He was in this as the Godfather. I was like, but this is like the one that everybody is with, and this guy is in this for only a small portion of the movie.
Right.
And now coming back to it, he was in a lot longer than I remember it now, but not by much.
It's those few particular scenes people remember, and a lot of his screen time is he's just kind of there.
What? I mean, Brando, having watched a lot of Brando films over time, I mean, most of the films I can think of outside of On the Waterfront, he was barely in those films.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. He didn't take it seriously.
Right. The actually, it's kind of funny that his last full film, if I remember correctly, I believe was
the Island of Dr. Moreau.
No. He was in the score, Frank Oz film in 2003, that I think was the film that finally paired him with the other Vito Corleone, Robert De Niro. And it's kind of interesting that he ended his career on that.
Let's also not forget The Brave, with which also came very late in his career, which was Johnny Depp's only directed film.
Right. But the score, apparently he had gotten so, by that point in his career, he was just weird. I like the Island of Dr. Moreau. Apparently he spent half the time wearing a muumuu, and that was something he insisted on. Supposedly in the score, he refused to wear pants. And at least for much of the film. I don't know. He was an odd.
If you read his autobiography, he had a really bad childhood, though. Like, really bad.
But
Like,
what's that?
bad. If you read his autobiography, he had a really bad childhood. Like, alcoholic parents. A lot of stuff was going on in his life. Like, a lot of stuff. So I kind of see why he turned out the way he did.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, he's definitely notable and impressive in much of what he's in this one. There's certainly, there's kind of a reason that, but a lot of that first scene, some of the iconic parts of that scene were almost like improvised. Like apparently the cat, Coppola just found it on set and said, "Here, why don't you hold a cat?"
I mean, that cat acted amazingly.
That cat was a friendly cat.
Apparently, the cat was so happy that it was drowning out Brando's dialogue, and he had to re-loop some of it. And then, of course, his whole thing with famously, he auditioned for the role with cotton balls in his cheeks. And apparently he fixed his mouth with a prosthesis to give him that sort of hangdog look and vocals. It did make it kind of hard to understand some of what he said. But on the other hand, it kind of helps add to the mystique of the character. Like, this is a character who doesn't have to be clearly understood for his point to get across. It's like he's going to make you an offer you can't refuse, and it's simple as that.
You can act like a man.
Yeah, there was that. So we are introduced to the Undertaker comes in asking a favor, and that's where we get the famous speech of you never invite me over, you never you
never even called me the Godfather,
right? You don't even call me the Godfather, and he's basically dressing him down for a lack of respect, essentially. Basically,
not really being buddy with him at all in any sense of the word.
Right. But he does ultimately agree to help the guy. This is the we have known each other for many years, but this is the first time you've come to me for counsel or for help. I can't remember the last time you invited me to your house for a cup of coffee, even though my wife is godmother to your only child, And then so like I said, they give so essentially his daughter had been harassed and beaten
and
to
raped.
The point. What's that?
I think she was also raped.
I believe so, yes. But she had basically been quote unquote ruined. And he keeps saying, Bonera is the character, he keeps saying, how much shall I pay you? And that kind of thing. It's like, Bonera, what have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully? If you'd come to me in friendship, this scum who ruined your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if by some chance an honest man like yourself made enemies, they would become my enemies, and then they would fear you. It's like, but it's fun. But he waves them off. He's like, and actually, I was thinking about this, and I thought that was fun. Where he's like, someday, and that day may never come, I will call upon you to do a service for me. But and he does ultimately. Later on, he does call on Bonera for it's a very simple service, but also a very meaningful one.
Yep.
And it left me to think, like, talking about things that reference this. In Batman the Animated Series, there's a very important episode because it's the one that introduced the world to Harley Quinn. It's called The Joker's Favor. And that's the one where the Joker tells this random guy who pissed him off that you owe me. And when he ultimately calls the favor in, it's very simple. It's like, just roll a cake. just push a cake into a room. He doesn't tell him that he's going to die because a bomb's going to go off. But still, and I was thinking when I saw this, I was like, I bet you that plot was borrowed from The Godfather.
A lot of that series is based off of most film noir and mobster movies.
Right. So I'm like, oh, okay. I already thought that was an awesome episode. Like, if there's one line from that show that I remember years later, is when the Joker throws down 2 pennies and says, "Here's your 2 cents." I always remembered that line, and I'm like, okay, so this is the may have been the origin of half of that episode. I love that. But anyway, so he has that. We see scenes cutting back and forth between him in the office and the various people at the wedding. The baker comes in and says that, now that the war's over, this guy, he's been great for me. He may be sent home. I want him to marry my daughter. And the Godfather happily says, okay, I will make sure that he can stay. And, so they have these various business. We have his discussion with Luca Brasi. And meanwhile, we got all kinds of great music from the wedding bands and everything. And Johnny comes in and sings a song. They kind of have to cajole him into doing it, but he does. And, we get through all that. And then, let's see.
You do get to see the cake that the baker actually says something about. It's this big, humongous thing.
It's an impressive cake. That is an impressive cake. Yes. You would imagine that it would kind of have to be,
for all those people coming. Yeah.
For all those people. Yes. Oh, and also meanwhile, we have this thing of the feds are going through the parking lot, taking license stuff down. And of course, Sonny comes out to confront them. And we have the scene where he breaks the dude's camera and then throws down some bills to pay for it, And
well, yeah, he can't exactly tell the feds to go away because they have a warrant,
right?
To search the.
We also get a brief introduction to Barzini, who is one of the other high-ranking. Or am I remembering this correctly? That was Barzini, or was it just some random politician? I can't remember. Whoever it was, they take a picture that he's in it, and they get rid of that film too. Like that's not allowed. Like I think it was.
It was one of the opposing Godfathers.
Yeah, so it was Barzini. I thought I was remembering that correctly. But yeah, basically, so the gist of it is, even without the story from Michael, we get the feeling that this is definitely a family that gets into some shady stuff. It's a family that has a lot of power and influence. We get all the basic stuff kind of put into place there. And then honestly, this is such a long movie. I'm going to have trouble keeping all the order straight. But I think, does anyone else have anything they want to do on the wedding? Like anything, the introductions, anything like that?
Well, I mean, what the feds were doing, they didn't really have a warrant for these cars, but it's an old police trick they would do when they had organized crime. They write down all the license plate numbers.
Right.
And that's what they were essentially doing, is getting a license plate number so they could later, if they found something suspicious, and they could, be like, that car was at the wedding.
Right. So maybe give them some leverage if they felt like they needed to lean on it later, or something like that.
I always, for some reason, I always remember the wedding scene more from Jane Austen's Mafia. Where they mix in the part from Scarface. We've got the really tall guy in the preacher's outfit. And then, He's like, say hello to my little friend. He opens up his coat, and it's the little person comes out with the gun, just starts lighting up the Godfather in that scene.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw that movie, but I remember that from the trailer.
Yeah, that was probably the most memorable thing from the trailer. I will say that of those type of films,
Yeah.
it kind of felt like they were reaching that horrible ending. They peaked at Hot Shots and Hot Shots Part 2, and then this was the dregs, sort of like how Disaster Movie was the dregs for Freebird and Seltzer. But Disaster Movie can't even kiss the Mafia's ring. That's how much lower Disaster Movie is in this.
Oh God. I mean, that was a movie that I got through 5 minutes and then walked out of the room. I was like, no, this is no. Oh man. But anyway, so I believe toward the end of this is where Johnny comes in and starts complaining to his godfather about that there's this movie that he would be perfect for. It's the perfect part. He's never going to get it. And he basically breaks down, starts crying. And that's where we see Vito. It's one of the few times we see him kind of lose his cool. And he basically starts smacking his godson around, starts berating him, like mocking him, like, why are you just whining, and essentially this big shot out there who's running the film has said that Johnny will never get it. And
in fact, he wants to ruin his life.
Well, yeah, we find out later a little bit more about, we find out exactly why this producer wants to ruin him. But not just yet. Right now, all Johnny knows is that he's been told, no way, it's not happening. And he's like, it'd be perfect for me. It would send my career, in a whole new thing. And then finally, his godfather comes around and he's like, and that's where we hear him say, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse. Although, of course, he sends Tom Hagen to do it. And Tom goes out to L.A. He meets the producer, gets run right off the set. Or director. I think he's a director-producer. I got the impression he kind of wears multiple hats, but he's heading up the picture regardless. He gets run off the set, basically. But the director's like, okay, well, check into him. And then later we go to his mansion, and he's being very cordial to Tom. He's like, why didn't you tell me you worked for Vito Corleone? And he's like, oh, I don't like to use his name more than I have to, But they have this good discussion. They get along really well. And he's like, but let me tell you, Johnny will never get that movie. It's perfect for him. It will make his career astronomical, but I'm going to run him out of Hollywood. And he explains why. He says that Johnny ruined one of his favorite starlets. Like, he had this ingenue that the casting couch was definitely a thing then. And we know that from the way this guy's talking, he wanted to be the one to ruin this girl. And apparently Johnny beat him to it. And he is very pissed about it. And he tells Tom straight up, he's like, it's not happening. It's not going to happen. And Tom thanks him and leaves. We should say that before that happened, he bragged about a horse that he had that I think he said he spent $600K on it, something like that. And he's like, I'm not even going to race it. I'm just going to put him to stud. And he's like, just bragging about this horse, Khartoum, I think his name was. And then we have the famous scene the next day where he wakes up and he sees, like, he feels a little odd. He looks around. He sees a little red. He realizes he sees blood. He starts freaking out. There's blood everywhere under the sheets. He flips the sheets open. And then horse lovers don't like that scene.
I understand why Don's brother was so badly scarred by that.
It's funny because when I first saw the movie on TV, they
Right.
basically censored that part out. They only showed his reaction.
Right.
So I saw the cut version of it, and then I saw the full version. Oh
Right.
shit!
Right. He was upset. Yes.
And in the game, they made it a little bit more elaborate. You had to actually sneak up around the building and sneak past a bunch of people just to get up the stairs inside the house and sneak back a whole bunch of the dude's guards until you actually we went to a cutscene where you placed the head
Right.
in his bed.
How deeply would this guy have to be asleep to not notice somebody putting a horse head in his bed when he's doing that?
Depends on what kind of meds he took before going to bed. I mean,
He's a Hollywood director in the 1940s, 50s. He probably took a lot of drugs.
right.
And he's a Hollywood director who lives in a mansion. However it had to be done, guards had to have been killed.
Let me ask you guys a question, though. Did any of you catch in the movie the small scene of Duvall leaving the home and he sees the little girl upstairs?
No, I did not catch that one.
No.
Yeah. Because there's a woman and her daughter who are upstairs, and she's basically ushering the child away. And Duvall sees it real quickly. And when he transitioned to the next scene with him telling the Don about his trip to LA, he mentions it. And Don says infamia to what he's talking about, because basically Jack Waltz was a pedophile. He was sleeping with that young child actress that was in the movie he was making.
No,
It's also in the book too.
I don't remember that part, but
It's really quick. It's really quick because when Duvall's leaving the house, he looks upstairs real quickly because he sees them, and then he just keeps on walking.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of Hollywood Babylon like stuff in the book.
That was one thing I meant to mention that I forgot. Is this actually is one of the books I've read more than once, but it, for whatever reason, it hasn't really made a huge impression. Like the first time I read it, I enjoyed it. And then when I read it again, I was at least a third of the way through it when I was like, holy shit, I've read this book before. I had totally forgotten that I had, but and there are parts that I still don't remember well, but I remember there were things that were not in the movie.
Yeah.
And I remember some, like Puzo has some interesting turns of phrase. Like there's one part where they talk about the Don's reasonableness. And I just thought that was an interesting way of putting it, his reasonableness, and that was like, I remembered that very distinctly. But
I mean, there's been a whole chapter on Sonny's, I guess you can call her girlfriend, the person who he was cheating on his wife with. It's been a whole chapter on her vagina.
Right.
That book is pretty wild, man.
It's pretty dirty.
Yeah,
to say the least.
And I don't know, did anyone catch the fact that Johnny Fontaine is basically Frank Sinatra?
Yeah, it's pretty close. Like there are a few kind of thinly veiled references.
Well, he is partial. He is part of the Rat Pack for a reason.
Well, yeah. But the what was I going to say? I was going to say something, and Dave got me thinking about this when he was talking about sneaking the horse up there. I'm honestly now wondering if the scene with the horse in Animal House wasn't meant to be a reference to this. That one wasn't quite as bloody, but but anyway, so we've got that, and of course later on Johnny sends this enormous bouquet of flowers thanking him for getting him the part. So we know that went through.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, a new player shows up, a new person in town who goes by the name Solaso. He also is known by his nickname, the Turk, played by Al Etieri. And the Don agrees to take a meeting with him, largely at the urging of Sonny and Tom, who are both into hearing what the guy has to say. Solaso is
and I know Tom says at the meeting that if we don't get into it, somebody else will.
Well, yeah. Solasso's into drugs, and Vito Corleone, his business, if I'm remembering correctly, and you guys who remember the book in the second movie can keep me straight on this. If I'm remembering correctly, the original business was basically olive oil import, but they were able to use that to do other things. And I believe bootlegging during Prohibition was one of the big things that they used the olive oil as a front for that. I think I'm remembering that correctly.
Yeah.
So basically, they also are big on, they're into gambling, and they do prostitution. So they do a bunch of things that are not legal, but as Vito Corleone says, some of the people who look the other way now may not be so friendly if drugs are involved.
That's one thing that's interesting if you think about it. So we have Michael Corleone. I mean, we got Corleone, and then of course his son eventually taking over, played by Al Pacino. And they were basically in a war because they did not want to sell drugs. But then Al Pacino later is actually the head of a cartel selling drugs in Scarface not long after.
Right.
I was telling Tammy about the two differences between him and Tony Montana. It's like you got totally conserved and very professional acted Michael Corleone, who was groomed basically to become the Don at a very early age, even though the Don says otherwise.
Well, he was groomed to be their what am I trying to say?
Like a mouthpiece.
A great ally, really. But actually, Brandon, if you want to talk about contrasts, you got the reserved Michael, who's trying to stay away from some of the certain things, and then he goes all in.
And Scarface is Michael Corleone on crack. So
but I was going to say, if you were looking for a contrast, you could go even further in Devil's Advocate, where he's pushing all the vices.
You could also say that there was parallels between Brando being in the olive oil business and then him serving up endangered species in The Freshman.
Yes. Most things are better with olive oil, but
not Bluto.
Yeah. Well, at any rate, so they take a meeting with Solaso, and it goes reasonably well. But then at the end of it, Vito Corleone just says, I took this meeting because my son said that you are a serious person, or something to that effect. And he says, but I must say no to your offer. And he's like, I wish you well. He's like, our interests don't conflict. So,
And Sonny tries to say something about it, and the Don's like, Sonny, and he's like, forgive my child. Sometimes he talks when there should be listening.
Right, right. He says something to the effect of like, "I spoil my children," and then later, after they leave, he holds Sonny back, and he's like, "Don't you ever tell anyone outside the family what you're thinking." It's like, wow, that's that's some harsh words there, but it's true that Sonny is not the brains of the operation, so it would be best if he's not negotiating typically. That's kind of what Tom's there for. But they're kind of taken aback because they have, I think, different reasons. I think Sonny is probably kind of excited about all the possible like riches and all that kind of stuff. Like, here's a way for us to build our empire, all that kind of stuff. Tom has a more pragmatic approach, but he is basically like, if we get out in front of this, we can control this. We lose power, we lose influence if someone else is able to grab this and take it, from us. So, but personally, I think the Don had a good point. A lot of people who support them now would not support them if drugs got involved. So they had these conflicting viewpoints, but whatever they thought, Salasso did not like being turned away.
Lasso didn't like being turned away, and unfortunately, I do actually believe that the drugs were the way the crime crime was gonna go. Even if they stood by their original values, they kind of have to change with the tide, and he wasn't willing to change with the tide.
Yeah, to a degree, that was a big thing. Was that Vito was? Yeah, I mean, he was an older generation. He was
holding true to a traditional value.
Yes. I
mean, there's a lot of contrast when you think about it. Like, I mean, look at American Gangster as a good example of one. Also, that very different timing, very different people, so to speak.
Right.
But you could even say that the movie, in a weird way, even though it's a period piece in a sense, it kind of has the sensibilities of the decade that it was made in, because you really do see the contrast of two different generations. And at the time in the 70s, that was such a big thing. I mean, the conservatives had their way of feeling, and the hippies and the kids that were growing up, they had their way. And you kind of can see that in this movie, even though it's about drugs and about, gambling, I guess, to some degree.
And it does come back to that thought that we've mentioned already, that, the movie's a gangster movie, and it's about the machinations of these different crime families and what have you. But it is first and foremost about family dynamics, and a big, big part of it is that generational. The younger generation tends to think they know best, and the older generation tends to think they know best, and they don't always fully get each other. So that's definitely an interesting. You see that a lot in this particular thing, but it does kind of prove the younger people right, because Salasso ends up finding himself willing partners in one of the other crime families, the Tataglias. And partly through that, he ends up putting a hit on Vito Corleone. And that's the scene we talked about before, where they're out. The usual driver apparently was homesick, and Fredo was driving his father around, and they stop at a fruit stand, and the he ends up getting gunned down, and Fredo fumbles the gun and ends up just kind of breaking down and crying on the sidewalk. And
it's another famous scene.
yeah,
That whole oranges scene. And
right.
it's just weird when you see him like shot like that, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he lived." I'm like, "What?"
He's a tough old dude, apparently.
Oh yeah.
But
where he survives and Sonny just gets blasted, later on.
Yeah, later on. Right now, Sonny, I think Sonny is the one that broke the news to Mike, or one of them. He gets the call and finds out.
Yeah, because he's on a date with Kay.
Yeah, yeah, and he has to go back and be with the family. He kind of ends up leaving Kay out to dry for a while because he really gets pulled back into the family orbit, and ends up doing things that he would. Well, he ends up being part of discussions he would not have been part of before. But it's really not until he goes to visit his father at the hospital that things really, really start turning around. I know I'm probably skipping some stuff, so if I skip anything that people want me to go back and hit, feel free to. But he goes to visit his father and finds there's no one guarding him. And the nurse is very rude to him. It's like tries to kick him out. And he just fights right back. He's like, he should have guards. Where are they? Oh, the police sent them home. And then so he calls his brother. He's like, there is no one here. Send someone. I'm going to stay. And while he's there, Enzo the baker shows up. And he ends up getting Enzo to help him with a little subterfuge. They stand out front, acting like they're the guards. And sure enough, a car comes rolling by and takes a look at them and rolls on by. And, Enzo's shaking like a leaf, but Michael kind of calms him down.
Yep. And it's around this time that he actually finds out that the police are also in people's pockets.
It's about that time that the Fuzz shows up, and they try to rough him up, and we see Captain McCluskey, who's played by Sterling Hayden. I didn't even recognize him, honestly. It's like I did, but I didn't. He's, on the other hand, a little bit later in his career than some of these other people. But Captain McCluskey in particular is straight up rude would be a kind way to put it. It's very clear that these cops are on the take, and especially McCluskey. It is very clear that he is on the take, and he ends up clocking Michael pretty good at one point. Although, if I'm remembering correctly, I think Michael strikes him back, right?
No.
Okay, never mind. It's but he definitely he clocks Michael one good, and apparently must have messed up his face. I think actually in the book it said it did a little bit, but
his jaw.
He definitely had some bruising going on for a while.
Well, I know he had that shiner at least even after he got married and junk, and I was like, boy, his eye is certainly taking a long ass time to unbruise itself.
Right. So basically, he ends up basically taking most of the aggression. He manages to get Enzo kind of to avoid any real issue, and then of course that's when there's a discussion about, hey, what what can we do about this? We can't, we can't go after the chief of police. That would just, you know, we can't, and particularly Sonny's hands are tied. He wants to, but he can't. Like that's not. And that's when Michael speaks up and says, "Well, I'll take care of them." Yeah, he basically it turns out that not only is McCluskey on the tape, he's basically Sollazzo's bodyguard for all intents and purposes. Meanwhile, we also have a scene where Sollazzo they tried to use Luca Brasi as sort of a mole, but he's found out very quickly and dispatched. And was it this scene or a little bit later where we got the scene of showing that he sleeps with the fishes?
It's a little bit later. They actually get it's after Michael has come back from the hospital, and he's kind of sitting with his brother and
that's the
Tom
scene
and all that. And they get a delivery by the door.
Yeah. And it's fishes wrapped in paper, and that's where they said it's an old Sicilian message that Lucas sleeps with the fishes. But the sorry, so there's this meeting set where they get the logistics figured out, like with barely time to spare, but they do get it figured out. Or Michael is going to go in to meet Sollazzo and McCluskey. He's going to get a gun that they're going to have stashed already in the restroom, and he is going to take care of them both and then be sent out of the country for a while. He gets a lot of coaching from Clemensa. I think, as Dave pointed out before, Clemensa is the guy.
Yeah.
And he gives him all kinds of coaching. He keeps telling him the same stuff over and over again and everything. And then Mike pulls off the hit. It's not without a hitch. It's not flawless, but he does take care of Sollazzo and McCluskey, and they spirit him away to Sicily, to Don Tomasino, who I want to say is an old family friend. I don't remember his exact relationship, but it's like an old family acquaintance. And he basically takes Mike under his protection, and he's just hiding out, laying low.
Well, and he's given two bodyguards that supposedly are there to protect him.
Right. And meanwhile, war takes off between the five families, basically. It's pretty much, there's a lot of stuff going down.
Well, Connie's husband has now beaten her twice, and once as while she's actually pregnant.
Well, as we've said before, Carlo is a piece of shit.
I have to admit, when I first saw the beating of her as a pregnant woman, that was one of the few moments that was hard for me to watch in a movie.
Yeah.
I loved it when Sonny gets in there and beats the crap out of him. He like picks up the trash can, just starts whacking him with it.
Right. He just goes up to him like he's just hanging out on the stoop in the street, a crowded street, and Sonny just
James Caan really did not like him though as an actor. Like those two really, like he really was kicking him sometimes in that scene.
Wow.
Like to make it even, like they did not like each other because he really did hit the actress in one of those scenes when she was playing pregnant. He really hit her, and so Jimmy Caan didn't like that, and so Jimmy and him got into it. He had some friends of his beat up Jimmy Caan, so Jimmy Caan got to beat him up when they finally filmed that scene of them in the what do you call it, the alley or wherever it was. He beat him up. Yeah, like, that was real.
Oh wow,
that was a savage beat. But I mean, I remember I remember when I watched the scene, and then we watched the later one, and I was watching with Kim, and Kim was like, "Yeah, I mean, I can't believe that he would do that again." And I was like, "Well, of course he would. It's a setup." And she didn't realize that until later, but I caught that immediately the first time I watched that. Is like, there's no way this dude is that stupid to do that again without a purpose.
Yeah.
After he beats his ass that time like that, there's no way. At least not while he's sober. He was sober at the time he did that other one. So
Yeah. I look at toll booths a different way after I saw this movie.
Right.
Like if I saw a toll booth attendant duck, I'm like, I'm out of here.
So so a couple things are going on here while things are looking rough in New York. In Sicily, Michael meets a group of young ladies and kids, and one of them, they immediately, like, you see them looking at each other, and immediately you see them having thoughts. And she is named Apollonia, played by Simonetta Stefanelli. She does not get much to say or do in the movie, to be honest.
Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday.
But she
gets to the barbecue.
They do have a bigger role for her in the book, but it's still not. It's a side chapter for Michael's life, basically. But it did give me. They made a bigger deal of it in the book. They mention it in the movie, but the whole idea of the thunderbolt, and they both are hit by the thunderbolt when they see each other, and like. Obviously, he immediately forgets Kay, and before long, they're getting married. But first, there's a scene where they go to this local inn or tavern or whatever, and cafe, I guess. And his bodyguards are being much more, but he's still stunned. Like, he's still kind of in shock. And they're talking to the guy like, oh, we just met this most gorgeous woman and just all this. And this guy, he had the thunderbolt. And they're joking and having a good time until they describe her. And immediately the patron of the establishment, or proprietor of the establishment, immediately, no, there's no woman like that here. And we know immediately, oh, they're talking about his daughter.
That's how I knew it was his daughter.
And then he is livid that these bodyguards have been they've been pretty loose with their interest. Michael speaks up and he's like, translate for me, and he gives this. He does a really good job of talking the guy down. And the thing that clinches it is that I would like to ask for her hand in marriage, which shocks the bodyguard who's translating him. And he's like, are you sure? But yeah, he does. And then the guy just looks at him appraisingly, and then he's all smiles. Then of course we have another wedding scene to go through that. And meanwhile, I believe it's meanwhile that we have the big blow up in New York. Well, first of all, Vito has started recovering. Like, he's gone home. He's no longer an invalid, but he's still keeping quiet and basically letting Sonny run things. Like, essentially, he's sort of there as a what am I trying to say? As a mentor figure, I guess you could say.
Well, he even has time to have a little bit of a courtship with this girl before he marries her. So,
well, Michael, yes, yeah.
I mean, Vito is pretty much semi-retired.
Right. Right.
Well, he was retired because of the him getting gunned down.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Sonny's pretty much running thing from the Empire, and Michael's on the run. So right now everything's kind of still in scrambles.
Right. And I believe this is the part where they sent Fredo to Vegas. I think he had to kind of help get his mind off of what he had witnessed, if I'm remembering correctly. But they so we get we do get a couple of really unfortunate sequences here coming up soon, and I'm pretty sure Sonny's is the first of the two, where the aforementioned setup, where Carlo goes at Connie, just goes at her, beats the crap out of her,
kicks open the bathroom door,
he just goes at her. She had taken a call from someone who said she couldn't meet him that night, and he's getting ready to leave while she's got dinner on the table, and of course that leads to this huge fight. But like we said, we know now it's a setup. The girl on the phone might have been in on the setup. Who knows? Or Carlo might have been that much of an asshole that it just happened to work out that way. But he goes at it. Sonny goes off the handle, of course, and you see him storm out, and Tom and his people go after him. They're like, "Oh, we got to go after him," and that's where we get the toll booth scene where Sonny. Yeah, it was an ambush. He went straight into an ambush.
Yeah, the toll booth attendant ducked, and then all of a sudden, a bunch of strong-armed men with machine guns, decided to mow his ass down.
Right.
And that was overkill.
Right. And actually, wait a minute. Who took out? I want to say it was Sonny who ordered the hit on Bruno Tattaglia. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah.
So essentially, this is payback for Bruno's death, but we don't fully know all the ins and outs yet. But definitely, that makes things very, very difficult. Word also gets to Michael in Sicily that it's not safe for you here anymore. You're going to have to move very soon. But unfortunately, they're not quick enough because one of his trusted bodyguards
has evidently been paid off.
It was paid off. Apollonia had been very happily learning to drive. She was very excited about it. And they're getting ready to go somewhere, and she is in the car ready to go. And that's when Michael catches sight of the bodyguard slinking off, and he sees what's coming about 50 seconds too late. And the car blows up and takes Apollonia with it. And so when Michael comes back, he is not happy. And he comes back a much darker person than before. But we don't see this right away. Apparently, when he meets Kay again, he says he's been back a year. Yep. So there's a full year that we're not really sure what he's been up to.
Yeah, this is where you would think that Kay would be like, "Bitch, where you been?"
Right.
But basically, a good deleted scene.
What's that?
There's actually a good deleted scene from the movie because it's actually in one of the extended versions of the film where they actually show Michael coming back from Sicily, and him and the Don are in the garden, and he basically tells him, because this is after the Don has already had the meeting with the 5 families. He says to him, I know that you gave your word. He's just like, but I didn't.
Right.
So whatever I do, my actions, they have nothing to do with you. And the Don looks at him and he says, we have a lot to talk about. And that's when you know, okay, they're planning something. And that's later on when he meets Kay a year later.
Right.
So, I mean, they cut a lot of stuff out of this movie.
I feel like that was in the book. I definitely
was.
I feel like I remember that scene. I think that was, yeah. But you're right. That probably would have been a pretty good scene to keep. But yeah, we do have that scene. And that, you're right. That probably was before they showed Michael showing up back in America.
Yeah.
There was the scene with the 5 families where Vito Corleone had called the meeting. He is like, and he calls it, he had Barzini basically help bring everyone together.
Mm-hmm.
And at the meeting, it appears that Corleone makes peace with Titalia, the elder Titalia. And it appears they basically talk it out and discuss the whole drug situation. And basically say that it will be allowed and they will regulate it, and Don Corleone will offer his political protections, you know. And as they're leaving, he said, I think he's talking to Tom, and he says something to the effect of, I knew Titalia wanted revenge for his son, but I did not know until tonight that Barzini was behind the hit. And somehow Barzini tipped his hat. And I have some ideas, but did anyone else catch exactly what he did to tip his hat on that? It's like, I kind of got the impression of it, but I can't say for sure.
I didn't really know exactly what tipped his hat on that per se, but I'm guessing that when he gathered all these 5 families together,
Right.
it was his telltale sign of figuring out who was behind it all.
Oh yeah, that was one of the things he was going for. Yes, he didn't say that. He called the meeting with the impression of extending the olive branches, as it were.
I think it was just Godfather's intuition.
Right.
I would also say this,
Yeah.
and this is coming from the book, though, which is when they're having the meeting, none of the other Dons really say anything. He does all of the talking.
Right.
I mean, except for when Titalia basically says, well, you know, who's to say that when the Don is better, he won't basically go for vengeance? And the Don gets up and he does the whole speech about if thunder or something was to strike Michael, then I would take vengeance on everybody in the room. Barzini's the only person that's talking. I mean,
Right.
so it's like you kind of would deduce, okay, he's the one really running the show. Everybody else is kind of a front.
True.
Yeah.
But there were a couple others that said that they actually do believe in that those old traditional values.
Whereas, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
But yeah, it is. KJ does have a good point. It was like, I mean, yeah, Barzini obviously was presiding over the meeting, but he also does seem to be a more active participant than some of the others. So that makes sense. But at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and pause here. I don't think I've heard much for a while from Tammy or actually it's been a minute on Brittany. Anyone have any thoughts on what we've hit so far?
Not really.
Okay.
You guys have kind of covered it.
Yeah,
All
same here. It seems like you guys got your own conversation going with the whole thing, and I'm just kind of like, okay. So,
All right.
I mean, David made the same comment I was gonna make about Sonny's assassination there, that it was just way overkill. But he said it before I could say overkill. So,
Did one of the shooters kick Sonny in the head after he shot him? Like, I vaguely recall that. Like, some guy kicked him after he shot him. I was like, well, damn.
Yeah.
well, yeah, they kicked him and then they went and shot him some
again.
more.
Damn.
I guess it is. Someone else pointed out how many times Vito got shot and still survived. Maybe they figured, like, hey, we can't take any chances here. But and you know,
well,
it's kind
Vito wasn't riddled with bullets,
right.
Like,
And you know, it's kind of funny though when Mike does the hit on Sollozzo and McCloskey. He hits Sollozzo once through the heart, and McCloskey, he shoots him in the throat and then in the head, and that's it. He fires 3 times and takes them both out. It's like there's definitely a difference. You know, it's definitely a difference.
Well, when you shoot somebody in the head, it's very rare they're going to get back up.
Very rare.
They do in Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean in general sense. I mean, it's very rare to survive a gunshot wound to the head.
Right.
Especially the center of the skull, which is what he did.
Right.
So it's a little more rage baiting or raging when you're shooting somebody to shoot somebody in the face, as murder trials will say. But when Marlon Brando's character, the Don, got shot, he got shot all in the back.
Yeah.
Which you've got a lot of bones back there that could have, stopped bullets, depending on the type of bullet that was used.
Right. And also, it really was essentially a drive-by where they could very easily. It was almost 50-50 whether those were going to be fatal shots or not.
But whereas Sonny was sort of enclosed by both angles and going nowhere.
It was shooting fish in a barrel, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and then of course with Mike and the other two, it was basically you had a trained soldier at point blank range. He was probably going to hit vital spots, That's although it is weird that he hit McCloskey through the throat first. That's like he might have done that just as repayment for the getting messed up in the face.
Probably.
One of the things I thought was the one thing I was thinking about and I picked up earlier on is after Marlon Brando got back from the meeting and indicated who did it, I feel like Michael had started his plan right then and there.
Right.
And Michael already promised that he wouldn't do anything while his father was still alive. But I have a feeling he started planning years in advance to do that final stroke. And I think this was where he really started it, when he realized the depth of the betrayal. I mean, actually, to tell you the truth, I think he started it as soon as Apollonia got blowed up. But I think that the actual planning, it looked like, started at that point.
Yeah, and I think when it came to Michael, he really knew how to clean house once he figured out everything.
But yeah, so the yeah, that's a sequence that has been revisited more than once. But that's of course a little further down. I think it was right around here, wasn't it? Like that we also have the Don's final scene where the famous scene in the garden where he's no that because that was his grandson. So of course Michael and Kay, of course, get together and have their wedding. As heartbroken as he is about Apollonia, apparently he wasn't willing to wait around too long.
Nope.
And so we end up with a few years go by. Mike becomes the family man of sorts. We see it was it his kid or Connie's kid that the Don was with in the garden?
It was a grandchild.
It was a grandchild. I know that.
Trying to think. I think it might have actually been no. It wasn't Connie's kid because he had to become godfather of Connie's kid in that baptism. Which
that was later.
Yeah, that was later.
That was later, and she did. Yeah, she did have. I mean, that would have been a different child anyway.
I think it might have actually been one of Sonny's kids.
Yeah, it's possible. I think he probably had a few little rugrats running around.
Yep.
Brittany, you're muted.
It's absolutely Mike's son. When they get out of the car together.
Oh,
okay. There you go. Okay, so again, I might be getting some order mixed up here, but I know there's the scene in the garden, and that is the final bow of Don. Oh, we did skip one important scene that does come before that, and that is the one where Don Vito calls his favor on Bonera, the Undertaker. And that is where he comes in. He's like, I'm going to ask you that favor now. And they roll Sonny into the room. And he's like, I don't want his mother to see him like this. Basically, like, do your magic.
Use all your powers.
Use all your powers. Yes. Yes.
And the famous line, look what you did to my boy. They did to my boy.
Yeah. Indeed.
He had a very emotional scene there.
Yeah.
You know what's funny is that garden scene.
Yeah.
Again, I know I've watched Jane Austen's Mafia way more than I've watched this one.
Yeah, when he puts the watermelon in his teeth.
Well, yeah, he puts the watermelon in his mouth instead of the orange thing, which is there. And then it's also sad that that's one of Jeff Bridges' final roles.
Lloyd Bridges.
And, I was going to say.
And then, of course, in that movie, of course, the little kid is paid off to kill him by spraying him with poison, which I don't know why I kept thinking, it's like, oh yeah, is this when the kid kills him? I'm like, wait, wrong movie.
Well,
you've seen that movie way too much.
Admittedly, the water can that they're using looks a lot more like I would expect a poison spray can to look, but whatever. This is old school gardening, I guess.
Actually, it's an old school water gun.
Right.
That's what it is.
Right.
It's the early water gun.
Right. So we have this scene of him playing in the garden with the grandkid, and he ends up keeling over a heart attack, and the kid, of course, has no idea what's going on. And yeah, so there's that. Also, I think we skipped a scene, but for the life of me, I can't remember when it takes place, and maybe y'all can help me figure out. But there's the issue with Polly, the driver, who had been absent when Vito was shot in the first place, and they said he was sick a lot. But apparently, at some point, they determine that he is.
I mean, you're talking way early in the film there, because that's right after the Don gets shot.
Right. So that's much earlier. They think Polly might have betrayed him. And so there's the famous scene where he goes for a ride with Clemensa.
Yep.
And Clemensa has him killed. And they're having a great drive. They get along well and all this stuff. But there's this other guy sitting behind him, ends up getting him killed. And that leads to supposedly an improvised line by Richard S. Castellano that was one of the is widely considered one of the most famous lines in the movie, which is leave the gun, take the cannoli. And it's like, yeah, you're not leaving the cannoli. That would be a crime.
Caring about food more than weapons.
Right. But yeah, so they have that. And I'm also trying to figure out at what point, I figure it's in this part where Mike goes out to Vegas and reconnects with Fredo. And this is where we meet Mo Green, who is Fredo's boss, essentially. He's
Fredo greets them with this band and girls and all this pizzazz stuff.
Right.
And Michael walks in and is like, "Get rid of the girls, get rid of the band, get rid of everything."
He's like, "I'm here for business. I'm leaving tomorrow." You know, it's like, and he's like, "Where's Mo Green?" Oh, he was going to get here when the party started. And Mike says something like, "Well, the party started." So we meet Mo Green, who he's a hot shot. He's a big wig out in Vegas, and this is the early days of Vegas when the mob was kind of a pretty big part of it, getting all the casinos going and everything. And Mo's got a good gig going.
What do you mean by was? I guarantee you the mob still.
Oh yeah, I know, but and Michael tells him straight up, I'm going to buy you out, and Mo's like, no, you're not. He's like, the hell you say? That's not happening, and he gets really pissed. He's not.
Well, yeah, he tries to tell Michael that he was in diapers when he was starting up the Las Vegas connection, and he's like, "Sit down and shut up. We actually strong-armed this guy, and that's how you got this role."
Right. So basically, it does not end amicably at that time. Mike goes on home, and we've got.
But you know what? I want to say something real quickly.
What's that?
In that scene, he also really does confirm the whole entire time it was Brazzini. Because he says to Michael, "I talked to Brazzini." So it was like that scene pretty much confirmed it.
Right. And so we find out that and then of course again, Fredo's kind of like you
don't talk to Mo like that.
Yeah. Well, he's sort of like he's not. He doesn't know what to think. He's
Michael basically tells Fredo the same thing that the Don told Santino,
pretty close. He said, "Don't ever take sides against the family again." It's like, yeah, and it's a warning that Fredo unfortunately forgets, as we find out in the second movie. But for this one, he is chastened. But yeah, and I guess there's another thing too that comes up, which is that they're trying to figure out who they know Barsini's the guy who's kind of behind the scenes, everything they need to take care of, but they figure they've got someone on their side, and they said, was it Sonny's funeral or the Don's funeral? I think it's the Don's funeral. I'm pretty sure it's the Don's funeral, where they basically said, we're going to set a meeting with Barsini, and but whoever he sends, or whoever comes to us with that offer of a meeting, we'll know that's the person who's betrayed us. And it turns out that Tessio, Abe Vigoda, the Tessio is the one who comes bearing news that Barsini wants to meet on Tessio's turf. We should note as well that Tessio and Clemensa are were told essentially that when Mike wants to go to Vegas and start over in Nevada, and he wants to start over as they say in The Simpsons, a legitimate businessman. But and Tessio and Clemensa have essentially been promised a chance to start over themselves as the new heads of the family, but they of course have some doubts about this, and I think that's part of the reason why Tessio reaches out to Barsini, and of course that seals his fate, because once they realize he is the one who's betrayed them, it's unfortunate for him. And I think it's right around there that Mike declares that he has agreed to be godparent to Carla and Asshole's kid. I'm not going to sorry, geez, my brain is fried. Connie and Carlo. What the heck was I thinking? Yes, Connie and Carlo. He has agreed to stand as godparent to their child. And that's where we get the scene where there's the scene in the church where he and Kay are standing with the child, being godparents and doing all the things. Meanwhile, we see Clemensa and a number of other people running about, getting set up, getting ready to do stuff. And we see essentially a massacre. The elder Tatalia, a couple of the other heads of the families, Mo Green, and Barsini. And I think there's a couple other folks. And then we see a separate scene where Tessio is approached and he realizes what's coming, So basically Michael cleans house. And then it's Carlo's turn. And he is told straight up, I know you set up Sonny. And he is taken out as well, which pisses Connie off, but
well, there's another scene that I think is kind of relevant,
right,
where Diane Keaton, who plays Kay, she actually asks Michael Corleone about his business, and first he gets all irate. And then he's like, okay, just this once, you can ask about the family business.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you want to know?
And she basically says, is it true? And he just looks right at her and says, no.
I love how they, I admit, again, back to Mafia again. I do love how they do that in Mafia because they make it look even more obvious. And she's like, okay, at the end. Like, yeah. But the sad
Yeah.
thing is that that's not that far off from what this scene is. Like, okay.
Well, yes, but it's not so much like it. Okay, it's more of a, this is what I've married into. I'm going to have to learn to live with it, and and then like the last shot of the movie is him being surrounded by people calling him Godfather and kissing the ring, and the door shuts and you see her looking at him with this sort of ambivalent but not pleasant look. and that's pretty much like the last shot. And I'm like, oh, that's ending it on a downer.
They should have had the kid killed by the dinosaurs like in Jurassic Park as they did in Mafia.
Oh, obviously. The and actually one of the, and this is another thing that's worth mentioning. It's obviously, we'll come back to it as we hit some of the other movies, but it's a theme of this whole series. It's not just a theme of family, but it's also a theme of, you might say, I took a film class called A Religious Interpretation of Film, and there were 4 basic narratives that the professor talked about. And one of them was the American dream and its flip side, the American nightmare. And one could say that this could work as an American dream movie, but it absolutely could work as an American nightmare movie.
Yeah.
But if you look at the trilogy as a whole, it absolutely works as an American nightmare movie. And really, one of the major currents throughout the whole trilogy is the corruption of Michael Corleone, because he goes from being a war hero and a pretty decent guy who really loves his woman, who really loves his family. He knows what they're on about, but he doesn't really want any part in it, to being much more ruthless than his old man ever was. And it's kind of, and Al Pacino is an actor who doesn't always bring his A game, but I feel like he really does in this trilogy. He really does. And even in this movie.
What do you mean? Don Pacino.
Oh, God.
No, that was the sole redeeming part of that movie. That was the sole redeeming part of that piece of shit. But
my.
Anyway.
Excuse me.
But yeah, like, he really does do a good job in this movie of going from, like I said, from the good guy to the cold-blooded, ruthless Don. And it's like, it's a fairly impressive transformation, I think. But but anyway, that's pretty much the plot. Again, were there any scenes we skipped that anyone really wants to give a shout out to, or any? Okay.
No, I just think I think that the movie hit a lot of the beats of the game, and the game hit a lot of the beats of the movie, and it was a very good movie.
Right.
Maybe slow in its process, but definitely in the end, once you go back to it, gets better and better each time you see it.
Right. And does anyone? So I guess we'll go on into production. We talked a little bit about the cinematography. It is a fairly dark movie for much of its length, but overall, I would say the cinematography was fairly solid. Any other thoughts on that?
I would say it's okay. I'm not gonna give it fairly solid. As you say, yeah, there's some dark points, and I mean one of the things that stuck out to me, for a shot composition, is you see them driving underneath the that sort of subway train in New York,
Right.
that is infamously shot in so many other films, and
Right.
it is just dark. You
And
can't
it's a
even
little
see the
blurry
car.
to be. It's a little blurry to be fair.
Oh,
On
right.
some of the restaurants and some of that stuff, like you said, subway job. You know, whereas I remember playing in the game and it was pretty darn clear, and you could see above you and below you and around you, and
That's the difference, though, between the proper lighting and not proper lighting.
Right.
And add on top of that film deterioration. I don't know if it was any better before it was restored, but even the restored version, you can tell
Yeah.
that there was definitely some lighting issues in a lot of those scenes.
And there's a bit of graininess in the restoration too, which
Well,
again,
when you restore something, you basically you increase the sharpness and you increase the contrast.
right.
So that's what you do. So that's part of the reason why it's dark.
Right.
well, and it's also cleaning some of the nitrate off. Definitely.
I mean, but that was all intentional in a weird way.
Right.
I mean, because when you look at Gordon Willis, who was the cinematographer, I mean, he kind of pioneered that darker look in movies. Because I mean, you see a lot of movies today that shoot similar to that. A lot of low lighting or very much no lighting. All of this natural lighting for the most part, in their movies. You know, but yeah, I mean, the brass at Paramount. I remember reading this about the movie when they first saw the movie. They were pissed. They're like, "What the fuck is this?" It's like we can barely even see the goddamn thing. And you know, they were pissed. But Coppola was like, "Well, no, I mean, this is how we want the movie actually to look." I mean, you know, there were a lot of issues over that.
There was some sort of thing about them wanting to have it look similarly to how it might have been shot back in the day.
Right.
Yeah.
But, you know, if it was going to be that way, then just shoot it in black and white.
Correct. I was going to say that.
Yeah, but if you're talking about something done in the 40s to 50s, shooting wise and film wise, you go back to references of films those times. I mean, Citizen Kane is your example at that point.
I mean, there was also like another process, and I think that this is what they were trying to do was. I don't know if you ever heard of 3-strip Technicolor.
Mm-hmm.
Like you would see that in movies like, say, Robin Hood from like 1939, or I'm trying to think of some other films, but it's a specific type of color where it's like magenta is like the more dominant color. But the way that they did this movie, that's what they were kind of trying to aim for, was like a 3-strip Technicolor. Because someone mentioned black and white, and they mentioned that at first. They're like, no, we can't do this movie in black and white. Like nobody's gonna sit through that. And so, you know, they changed at the last second to that. But, you know, I don't know. It's weird the fact that they didn't think like, okay, this is a little too dark for this, too dark for that. I don't know, man.
It also, the film, I would say this one, the studio may have balked at the time, but this one definitely shows a tremendous influence on what came over the next few years. I think between this one and Mean Streets came out the next year, you really had this sort of dark and gritty aesthetic that also had this, as you said, sort of weirdly over certain colors are kind of oversaturated at times. I thought there was a weird yellow tint to people's skin a lot in this movie, sort of an orange yellow tint, that you see that a lot in some of those films from the 70s that, you know,
Chinatown.
A lot of, well, yeah, Chinatown, but a lot of those films, it's the type of way you develop the film,
right,
that causes that yellowing.
right.
So I mean, it would have been the chemicals that gave it a little bit of yellow to give it more. I mean, that's where the concept of sepia tone comes from for a lot of people.
Right. Now, of course, for in terms of the rest of the production, they really did go all in on the period detail and trying to get this thing like there's a lot of sets. There's a lot of what am I trying to say?
A lot of vehicles, a lot of sets.
Exactly.
Period
exactly.
pieces. Period.
Yeah.
Look.
Right. And I think they did a solid job with that. You know,
A lot of cool props.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, the budget wasn't that big when you actually look at it. You know, for the type of movie this is. I mean, the second film had a huge budget, but the first one, I mean, they didn't think that this movie was going to be what it became.
I mean, this is still technically before the concept of a blockbuster. So,
right. And this was also very early in Coppola's career. He had not yet really hit it off as like the guy. You know?
he got this film because the author, I believe, wanted a Italian director.
Right.
Yeah. And everybody else in town turned it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. He had, let's see, before this point, this was, I guess, his. Okay, so he had a few movies, but mostly movies no one really talks about. Some of them fairly low rated. Apparently, he directed a movie called Tonight for Sure that has a 2.9. What's that?
The Rain People. I think it was like 1968 that he did.
Yes,
like
69.
Because he worked with Duvall and Timmy Kahn in that movie.
Oh, this was an estimated budget of about $6 million.
Okay. So that's a. Of course, he has gone on to have a very interesting filmography over the years, but so yeah, we had an unknown, largely unknown director, untested director. A lot of people near the start of their career, but yeah, again, this one really did hit in a way that I think the producers were not expecting. And then you had the and I want to say, I could be remembering this wrong, but I feel like I read that the actual novel had been a moderate success or middling success before the movie came out, and then it just took off. I could be remembering that wrong.
It was controversial when it came out, actually. I mean, because of the fact that the mob did not like the way it portrayed them, you know. And then there was actually, when they were actually producing this film or making it, Frank Sinatra actually saw Mario Puzo in like a restaurant. And the producer of the movie told him, do not speak to him because he does not like the book and he does not like the fact we're making this movie. And Puzo actually ran into him at the restaurant and they got into it. And he was like, you motherfucker, you put all this shit about me in your goddamn book and you don't even fucking acknowledge me? And Puzo was like, well, actually, no, I didn't write this character about you at all. You know, and Frank Sinatra held him accountable about it. He was like, no, I know you wrote this about me because these are intimate details about my life. And I mean, that book caused a lot of problems, you know, for that movie.
Right. There is also some other levels of controversy too. I mean, of course, the movie, your protagonists that you're rooting for are people steeped in violence and corruption and all that kind of stuff. And some of them use some very unfortunate language. There are a few words bandied about that should not be used. And there are, you know, most of the Sonny says some things that he shouldn't. There are a couple other characters that do. And then, of course, we talked before about, you know, the scenes of Carlo beating his wife, the scene of the horse beheading. You know, you've got some interesting stuff here that is not going to be to all taste, but you know, but I feel like in some movies they would come off different, if that makes sense. Like, but anyway, any other thoughts on the basic production?
No,
Nah,
It's
not
kind of
really.
what you expect from a dated period piece.
Okay. And now for music. I've already mentioned, like, as much of it is maybe borrowed as may be the case, I think the score to this movie is absolutely phenomenal. It's one of my all-time favorites by Nino Rota. Anyone have any other particular thoughts on the music?
Oh,
Anyone?
I love the soundtrack. I could listen to the soundtrack in its entirety if I really wanted to. Of
Right.
course, I listened to it in its entirety while playing the game. So, sorry, I have to keep bringing up the game because it kind of goes parallel with it. So.
Right.
I also liked how they used music in the movie. It
Yes.
was somewhat minimalistic while using it for specific scenes that actually added a lot of weight to those scenes.
Right. And a lot of it's actually in the film, like in the wedding scenes and whatever. There's like a lot of music in those moments that fits, you know.
Right.
And this is one where I'll say, and again, you know, where we haven't hit the whole movie because part 2 is next week, but The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. You know, I mentioned earlier that there's the running debate over whether The Godfather Part 2 really is a sequel, and in which case, is it one of the rare sequels that's better than the original? You know, a lot of people talk back and forth about that. But a similar debate that a lot of times you hear a lot is what movies are actually better than the book. You know, most of the time people will agree the book is better. But I would argue The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2 are the rare example where the movie is better. And a big part of that is the music. Because music can add a whole dimension that you're just not going to get when you're reading a book. You know what I mean? And a few of the other movies where I would say that, The Princess Bride is one. Jaws is one. The movies are better than the book. And the music in both of those is a huge part of the reason why. So I don't know if anyone would agree with any of those being better than the book, or, you know, but
No, I think that you're right.
I know. I remember my father saying when he was reading the book, he was reading it at a time when Catholic schoolboys probably should not have been reading the novel. And so when his teacher caught him with the novelization of The Godfather,
you know, for kids.
yeah, I know that it was a very, and he said at the time it was like porn for kids because every single one of us wanted to go to the library and read it, and because it was that dirty of a novel. It was quite steamy, evidently, at the time. So
I remember I had a friend who they're in a group that I was in, and they told me that when they read the book The Exorcist, the book actually scared them, or when they saw the movie was almost like a comedy to them. And I looked at them, I was like, "Are you serious?" And they was like, "Yeah, no, the book scared me, but the movie didn't." So I mean, in some cases, I mean, you know, the movie really is, you know, that benchmark. You know, they set the benchmark higher than the actual book. You know. But in this particular case, I would say, yeah.
I'm still waiting for an Amityville horror that will actually be as truthful to the novel as can be, because there is a part in the book itself where Kathleen Lutz is actually levitating naked off the bed, and I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, I have to admit, both adaptations of that are not really that good, but I agree with you. Yeah, they don't live up to the book.
Yeah,
but in any case,
yeah. There are times where it's hard to properly adapt it. Like a couple weeks ago, we covered The Stand, and to me, the book is one of the great books. It's absolutely phenomenal. But the miniseries is great, but it comes off as much more hokey than I think the book ever could. And another example of that was a book that is cheesy as hell to begin with, but the movie's even cheesier, is The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I mean, it just doesn't hold a candle to the book. And it's partly because what sounds hilarious on the page doesn't always translate to screen, you know.
Well, let me ask you this: do you feel the same way about The Shining? Because I have a lot of friends that there's some who like the movie and there's some who just like the book.
To me, The Shining is an excellent film that is an absolute butchery of the book.
Okay.
It is an adaptation. It sucks horribly, but as a movie, it's good.
Have you watched the TV special version?
I liked it a lot more because it was much closer to the book, but I haven't seen it in years. I need to go back and rewatch it. But yeah, and we did do the whole discussion on The Shining, and I made that point very clear. I'm like, yeah, I hated the movie for the longest time, and it was because it was such a butchery of the book. But now going back, I can appreciate that it is its own thing, you know.
I like The Shining better now that Doctor Sleep has been made. So that being said,
I actually think it's interesting because I just finished Doctor Sleep after reading The Shining, and I will say that even Doctor Sleep doesn't truly go off of the original Shining, because Doctor Sleep actually retcons the very end of The Shining, so it's very interesting how that works. So it's kind of there.
I basically don't think you can take any of Stephen King's books and make the movie better than the book.
It's debatable. I haven't read all of the ones that I've seen movies for, but I personally think that The Green Mile is as good as the book.
I actually think it's
probably
better.
not.
Okay, I low-key think it's better. That would stand by me. I think low-key they're both better than their books or short stories.
Yeah, I haven't read The Body. I need to read it, but I haven't.
His short stories are the best things to be adapted because you don't have to worry about missing character development.
True.
The issue with Stephen King adapting his novels is he always spends a third of the book in character development at the beginning.
Right.
And the formula works well because you get to know the characters well enough so that by the time stuff starts happening and your characters start going all to pieces, you're like, damn, I knew that person. Well,
Right.
fuck, I don't want them to die. I invested like a third of the book in this person.
Right.
Which is weird because in The Godfather, even to bring it back, like in the book, it's like there's so many other characters that they completely cut out for the movie. Like,
Right.
You got like 5 characters who had even the Johnny Fontaine character. I mean, he was a huge character in the book. You could say he was a 3rd or 4th lead in the book.
Right.
Well, they could have made this into a much bigger series than they did. They could have had like 5 movies.
But that's an example of where sometimes it can help. One of the reasons why sometimes the movies are better, a good example is Jaws. There is a mob subplot in the book that's and they cut it out of the movie almost completely, and I think the movie's better for it, you know. So that it does happen, that can be a good thing.
Someone tried to tell me that, like, because you're speaking about Jaws, I don't know if you've ever read like the novelization of a movie, like how they would do that, like back in the day, like after the movie comes out, they'd write the novelization. Someone told me that the novelization of Jaws is really good. It's actually better they felt than the actual book itself.
I don't think I've read a novelization of the first one. I've read the novelization of Jaws too.
Okay.
I've read Peter Benchley's The Beast, and I've also read Jaws itself. Now, Jaws the book was definitely pretty darn good. I think the movie was pretty good at the time for what it needed to be, and it almost never was. So I feel like it's a movie that survives its elements.
Right. Well, again, it had things that can help, but we got that discussion too. So now, who knows? Maybe we could have hit that for the franchise. Maybe if we do another franchise year, then the Jaws franchise will be a good one to hit. but who knows? But anyway,
That's kind of funny because we're doing the Jaws on the other channel.
oh, you are
I
okay.
am.
Because we did Jaws 1 already a couple of weeks back, and now we're hitting Jaws 2 on her on
Okay,
her turns.
okay, good times. Yeah, but yeah, one day I need to revisit them. It's been so long since I've seen some of those.
Jaws the Revenge was the best out of all of them.
You know, when I was a kid, I loved that movie, and now I hear people dunk on it so much, but it's probably been 30 years since I've seen it. So,
It's weird 'cause I like the second one better than I like the first one for some weird reason. I don't know why.
Well,
anyway,
I hate to take off on y'all, but I have to leave.
okay.
But
Well,
just as a heads up, my favorite scene is that scene at the end, and this scene.
Everyone wants my Dunkachino. Can't get enough of my Dunkachino. Kids from 7th to 17 lining up for my Dunkachino.
oh, okay, we were having a classy discussion. Okay. And
That's how
favorite
you end
character
up.
before you go. Okay. I guess he's already gone. Yeah. Well, I was getting ready to lead us into favorites anyway, so let's do that. Let's start with you, Dave. Let's say, what is your favorite character,
Okay.
favorite scene, and let's say, is there a gangster film that we haven't hit yet that you would really like to see us get to sooner or later?
Okay. So my favorite character is in between Michael Corleone, and believe it or not, I do like the character of Don Corleone alone, just for kicks and giggles, but especially when he puts the teeth in his mouth and he's running around chasing his grandson. But unfortunately, he dies during that scene. As far as a favorite scene, it's always the horse head showing up in the bed of the movie producer or director or whatnot, and I guess it's also because I favored playing the game at that moment too. So it's like you had to jump through some hoops to even place the damn horse in his bed. So
Right.
the fact that they make it so simple and it's just the next morning, it's like. But you said favorite movie that I would have to say Dolomite.
What? My name is Dolomite?
Yeah.
Okay. That was fun.
Dolomite would be fun to talk on this movie.
Okay.
Because KJ was actually on with another one that I actually thought was pretty hilarious at the time. Although now, remember that one with the guy with the long penis?
Oh yeah.
That was part of the Dolomite collection, believe it or not. But so
Shit.
we already talked about that a long time ago.
Okay. Good times. Okay.
Well,
All right.
Dolomite would be fun to go on about it here.
Good times. All right. How about you, Tammy?
My favorite character is Michael.
Okay.
Favorite scene. I don't know why, but when Sonny gets ambushed, it's just like because it's so overkill. It's just
Right.
As far as a movie we haven't covered, I have no idea what to say for that because you know, since I started the group, we've covered so many different ones, and then I'm in the other group. I have no idea what to pick.
Okay. Yeah, and I guess you said you don't really watch a lot of gangster films anyway, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the
You
Oh,
could
you
always choose West Side Story.
you could do well, yeah. That'd be a little different, but sort of.
well, the only movie that I can think of is, but it's not a gangster movie. It's a sniper movie.
Okay, I could work.
So, oh shit, what was the name of it? Oh, I think it's American Sniper or something like that.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
There's
Yeah,
there's a movie called American Gangster too. I know that.
there is that, and that's a solid film as well. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
How about you, Brittany?
Well, as far as favorite character, I'm gonna go with Tom. I do feel sympathetic for him kind of being in this position where he's part of the mob, but he's like having to be a lawyer as well for them and try to get them out of crap.
Right.
I guess being a fan of Breaking Bad and seeing Saul Goodman and all that comes into mind when I see Tom.
Better call Saul.
Comparison.
Favorite scene is gonna probably be, I mean, pretty much the funeral parlor scene going in there. I think that's probably, in my opinion, probably where we kind of really see the Don sort of breaking, but trying to keep that strong face after telling the funeral parlor at the beginning to, you know, don't cry. You don't cry. Men don't cry.
Right.
And here he is in a very weak moment. He's like, he can barely hold it together. And that I feel is why we got the Oscar nominee there.
Right.
As far as movies, because I don't know what movies you guys have seen, I will start with Goodfellas. Have you watched Goodfellas?
Yes.
Okay.
Have we done that on this channel?
Nope.
Yeah.
There you go. Right there. Goodfellas.
All right. That'd be a
I
good
should prefer it to The Godfather.
one.
I absolutely love Goodfellas. It's one of my favorite mob movies. I got another one would be I forget James Cagney's film all the
White
way
Heat?
back in the day. Which one?
White Heat?
Maybe White Heat. Yeah, where he plays the mobster and dies in the end. I just forget what the name is. It's been a long time since I've watched the film, but that was really good considering that's a 1920s or 30s film. 'Cause that's before the war.
I have an unwatched copy of that, so I need an excuse to watch it.
Yeah.
Pretty sure we discussed this one on the other channel, but one that I always like putting forward is one with a very young Leonard Nimoy in Kid Monk Barony, where he plays a young punk who ends up getting his face more pretty and comes and it's got an interesting message. But and I know it had something to do with boxing, but it had something to do with a little bit of like young gangsters who were kind of like little rascals, like characters. So,
Okay. All right. And how about you, KJ?
Favorite character. I mean, Michael is kind of like, I would say kind of cliched, but I would probably say the Don himself was probably my favorite character. Even though we don't see him a lot, every time he said something, it was usually profound. And that just kind of resonated with me. And in terms of a favorite scene, I think my favorite scene actually was the last time we see him and Michael together when they're sitting outside and they're talking. And you can kind of tell he's losing his faculties. And, you know, Michael basically is assuring him he's taking care of everything. And there's that small moment where he says, you know, I never wanted this for you. I wanted you to be like a senator or something like that. And Michael basically tells him, I could have never been that. And you just kind of see at that point, even if Michael wanted to change his course of life, he couldn't. He was just in that position. That was his fate. And I don't know, for some reason, that just resonated with me.
Good deal. All right. And I know you're not here regularly, but what would be a gangster movie that you'd be tempted to come back on for?
Someone said Goodfellas. But in terms of a gangster movie, have you guys done Dillinger?
No.
The original from like the 1940s?
Yeah. There's that one, and there's
No,
also
we have
one
not.
from the 70s, too, by John Milius.
Yes.
But yeah.
And also Public Enemy with Johnny Depp.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, if you ever did Dillinger, I would definitely probably come back for Dillinger.
Good times. All right. And for me, well, obviously by the rules of cinema, the best character is obviously the cat. I mean,
He definitely stole that scene.
but I would say
You would pick the cat.
He needs his Oscar.
I would say that overall, I would say Michael has the strongest trajectory in the movie, and he's kind of, again, the obvious choice. Vito Corleone is a memorable role. In terms of characters I like Clemensa and Fredo. I just like them. They're so, and Apollonio is cute. There's a lot of people worthy of mention. As far as scenes, I think probably that opening scene with the Undertaker, with the cat and Don Corleone, that opening scene is iconic. It's classic. I always think about it when I think about this movie. The scene where Michael is explaining the family business to Kay is also a really memorable scene. I guess I'll probably go with those. There's a lot of good scenes in the movie, but those ones probably are the ones that immediately stick out. And there certainly are a lot of good gangster films we could cover. We've already covered one of my favorites. We did Miller's Crossing, and I absolutely love that movie. But a film that is a very different kind of movie from the ones we've been mentioning that I would love to hit one of these days is Martin McDonagh's film Seven Psychopaths. I enjoy that movie. It's a lot of fun. And it is technically a gangster-ish film. So that could be a good one, I guess.
Or eight heads in a duffel bag, or
yeah, I think I saw that one once.
What about The Irishman?
That, if we want to hit another 3+
I would
hour.
come back for that.
What's that?
I said I would come back for The Irishman. I actually like it a lot.
The Irishman was good, but it is long.
Oh yeah.
And actually, you could make a whole month of Martin Scorsese gangster movies. You could, in Mean Streets. You've got Casino. You've got a bunch of them you could do if you really wanted to.
Isn't The Departed considered a gangster movie?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And The Departed would be one of the good ones. That would be one I would consider.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess I've seen more gangster movies than I thought I have.
And actually, again, this could be an idea for franchise month. We could do the 3 Infernal Affairs movies, which were the original Hong Kong series that The Departed was based on, and then do The Departed to end the month. That would be interesting.
I actually liked Internal Affairs more than I liked The Departed when I actually finally got to see it.
Right. I think they combined the first two movies to make The Departed, if I'm remembering correctly. But
Yeah.
yeah. So it'll be fun. Anyway, I'll hand it back to you, Dave. That's Francis Ford Coppola's Mario Puzo's The Godfather.
Alrighty.
Yep.
And I would probably end up putting Dangerous Minds and Sugar Hill in there too.
And also check out Brandon left us already, so I'll do a quick little mention. SeptumSin versus the World is his channel. A few months back, we hit a very interesting anime called Bakano. That was a very interesting gangster program. So check that out if you haven't.
Ready. So my name. Okay. So my name is David Streggy. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. And I'll get into my outro in a moment. So let's go around the room and give everyone a chance to tell the audience a little bit about who they are. Tammy, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I go on this channel with David and another one and discuss movies with everybody and get their opinions and everything. And now that it's summer, I'm having fun with my 1972 Grand Prix. And I just got a new addition to our, I don't know how you want to say it. I sold my truck and I bought a new vehicle. I bought a RAV4 and I'm having fun trying to figure it all out. Because going from a 2011 Avalanche to a 2018 RAV4 is quite different. So that's kind of what I've been doing the last couple days.
Alrighty. Heading over to UKJ. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
My name is KJ. For a period of time, I used to run a group called Timeless Classic Movies and Television on Facebook. We're still up. It is almost coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So I will definitely be trying to get back active into it because more recently I've been trying to work on a few screenplays. So that's what I've been up to lately. Other than that, trying to catch a good movie here and there and just happy to have been invited back to this platform.
Alrighty. Well, thank you for coming back on. It's been a pleasure. And hopefully you can come back for the rest of them this month. We're excited to talk away these movies. So heading over to you, Embryo Arts. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, my name is Brittany Dodson, also known on the internet as Embryo Arts or I Don't Know. I am a cartoonist, a novelist, and a VTuber. And I spend a lot of my time doing comics and art. We do a topical show on Tuesdays, and then we do video game shows on Fridays and Sundays.
Very cool. Alrighty, Jake, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do?
I am Kotobukijake, as mentioned a moment ago. I am the sometime co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World, where we do pickup videos. We do sorry, it is the end of the night. We do the aforementioned discussions about anime or now animation, more so than just anime. Those are monthly discussions. The most recent one was on Galaxy 3.9, which I think was last week. And we've got a number of other things, mostly Brandon's projects. I myself keep very, very busy. Got a job that keeps me much busier than I would like, but I do spend a lot of time doing travel. I visited Lake Drummond for the first time last week. Now been to both of Virginia's natural lakes, and that's really fun. And got ate up by a lot of bugs, because you get a lot of bugs in Dismal Swamp, especially when it's hot. And just I try to keep busy with various side projects, writing and vegetable gardening. It takes up a lot of my time, and of course I take time to watch stuff to join these folks for our discussions, and very much have been looking forward for the opportunity, as I said before, to revisit this franchise. So it's going good so far. Looking forward to finishing off these movies.
Okay. And like I said, my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey we've been having, where we've been covering this movie and that movie and anything in between. And I think we all like to get together once a week and shoot the shit out over them. So hopefully you enjoyed our discussion on the film. If you haven't seen the film, go out to see it. Come back. Let us know in the commentary what you thought of the film, what you thought of our discussion, and I'm sure we'll have many more merry adventurous discussions to come. Like the rest of this month, we are covering The Godfather. So I believe including the coda, correct?
That is the plan.
That is the general plan. So, but I do moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also go. Some of us also go on Sundays to follow our own adventures on that pathway. And I do believe that we are going to be doing Jaws 2 this Sunday, and if everything goes well, we'll be doing Inherit the Wind the following Sunday. So two very different films, and I'm sure both of them have their inherent sense of danger. But in any case, hopefully you get a chance to follow along with both channels, and we'll see y'all next time here on Inside Movies Galore. Everyone say good night.
Good night.
Buonanotte.
Good night, all.
Inside Movies Galore just makes you just want more. We've had all in the world of media to explore. Horror, anime, or Curious George. Our love of new things was our reward. It is the best night of our week.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.